Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Webcomic Book Club podcast. I'm Zae,
And I'm Mek.
and this week we are talking about a webcomic that I put in the list called Slightly Damned. So, since I put in the list, I kind of want to hear your opinions of it first, just to get that out of the way.
It started boring. The start of it was dull enough that I literally went and took a nap before I could continue reading it. But that may have been the point. I'm not sure. It gained momentum very quickly and started to become a lot more interesting very rapidly.
All right, that seems like a pretty good thing. So, before I go into my thing here, let's actually describe the comic. So, initially is the story of a Jakai, which is the creator's maid species, who dies and is sent to the Ring of Slightly Damned because she wasn't that.
Not that bad, but she wasn't good.
Yeah. So she was sent to the Ring of Slightly Damned instead of just straight up hell. And
Long story short, the Ring of the Slightly Damned is boring.
yeah, it seems as though it's just like a forgotten place in hell. And well, there's just nothing going on in the Ring of Slightly Damned.
Yeah.
But very quickly, within the 300-page setup that we generally try to stay within for this, I have to point that out because this happens in page 70. They leave the Ring of Slightly Damned, return to the overworld, meet a angel, and it gets really good and really adorable.
Yeah.
So I personally freaking love this comic.
By the way, we never even mentioned that she met a demon in the Ring of the Slightly Damned that was like this super nice demon.
Oh yeah, no, he was.
We didn't mention Buaro at all.
That's a damn shame because Buaro is actually probably my favorite character.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love Buaro, and he is such a great comic relief while at the same time pushes the plot.
Yep. So basically, the Jakai is named Rhea. Buaro is the demon that she meets. That's like obscenely nice for a demon, and then Kieri,
Please.
or Snowy is the angel that they meet.
Yes, and she's called Snowy because she is cursed by one of the 12 guardians to be a snow bunny, but she's able to not be a snow bunny.
Control it a little bit.
Yeah, control it a little bit.
Although sneezing fucks her over.
Yeah, apparently that messed with her concentration quite a bit. So, but yeah, I just love this comic. This is one of those comics that I say this a lot, and this is going to stop after we kind of get through a few more comics for this series, but this is one of those comics that I followed when I was following 40 to 70 comics. And it is actually one of those that I would keep on the main page, and if y'all would remember, Concessions, the very first episode of this, was the very first comic I started reading. When that ended, this was the next comic for me. This was the next comic that I started reading, and I kept frequently updated, and I would follow very closely. I think this was the comic that I had as my homepage for my browser at the time. It would load up, and this would be the comic. So
wow.
But when I had to move computers, basically it's screwed over all of my bookmarks. So that's why I use a more universal bookmark system. Because I lost my place in this comic. I lost where the comic was because it was my homepage. I never paid attention to the URL at that point, and I never thought to Google it or something. I don't know what the process was, but I stopped following it.
See, it's funny you mention that because I saw ads for this comic all the time on Fur Affinity, and I always thought, oh, I'd love to read this. I love to read this, but I was always on mobile, and it's a pain in the ass to read webcomics on mobile.
Yeah. What's interesting is that once I kind of rediscovered it by advertising and all this stuff, and I just kind of relearned the name again, I did not make any attempts to catch up with it because at that point it was 100 or some odd pages, and I remembered it being in a spot that I didn't quite care for, which was something that you're not at quite yet.
Nope, not quite.
But it's just a big festival, and there seemed to be nothing going on out there.
Okay.
Looking at it now, there very obviously is.
Okay.
But I read quite a bit ahead of where we are now. But I actually have quite a few things I want to mention about this comic. This comic is absolutely wonderful if you're learning to make comics. And what I mean by that is, the artist for this comic goes by Chu.
CHU,
Yes, CHU.
as in the Japanese sound for a mouse, or the sound a mouse makes.
Yes. They understood to take the story slow, and like that's something that's very often overlooked when people are starting to make comics, and that's something that I am really, really, really bad at. But for a perfect example, there's one scene wherein it is literally 5 pages of the characters sitting on the same bed and having a conversation, and you would have never noticed.
No, I honestly didn't.
And that is within the 300 pages. It is when they're at the inn and Carrie is in the other room, and so they all go in to basically like console her because she lost her brother, or like she can't find her brother, not lost her brother.
Well, I mean,
Different connotations.
can't find and lost. Well,
Different connotations here.
you have a good point.
And that entire conversation is all literally them sitting on the same bed in the exact same positions.
That also speaks leagues of the writing.
Absolutely.
Because the writing was good enough that you didn't notice that they were just sitting on a bed.
And this happened a lot. This actually did happen a lot. I noticed it in a lot of different spots. I just pulled this one example. But this is such a good comic to read. And as long as you're willing to take it slow and understand how everything is done, even though the art wasn't there for quite a while, I know it wasn't by any means bad. It was actually quite good for starting to make a comic.
Bad, but it was a case of this person had not been drawing their characters for years. Like, these were new characters to them. It was basically the implication I got.
They're new characters for a comic.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that seems pretty accurate. And over time, they end up like getting back into the swing of a style that they can use for the comic consistently. And actually, I would follow the artist on Furfinity for a while, and she does there's a lot of painting experiments, and does all these like cool, weird, like toony things, and they are wonderful to watch and just like see what she ends up making. And it really says a lot for just how good of an artist she is, because her style in the comic really hasn't changed. Like, it never felt like it changed the comic.
It didn't really change in so much as it got better.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy when you look at like the newest page versus one of the earlier pages, wherein it's like this very, very, almost want to say like chibi or anime style.
It was very rough.
Yeah,
It was like they defaulted to a style that they had done before that didn't quite fit with what they were doing.
Yeah, and what I thought was kind of funny was pretty much right at page 300 was when I seriously saw like just the severe uptick in artistic style, wherein like I really saw like the backgrounds got a lot better. They spent a lot more time on the environments, on the colors, and on the shading, and like on the line work. The line work improved hugely. I noticed that. And it was pretty much at or around page 300 where that really dramatically improved, and they kind of like got a style more in motion that you see towards the end, towards the newest page, I should say. So, like, I'm talking endlessly about how good the comic is, when really I shouldn't be, because it actually has won awards. The Ursa Major Award, which I think is a furry-based award given out, or I should say furry-based, but it is a webcomic award given out, and is very commonly given out to furry-based webcomics.
Okay.
Which is almost the exact same thing, but it gives some leeway for in case I'm wrong. And that's like a huge award to actually receive. So clearly,
this comic looks like it's received it twice.
Really?
2012 and 2013.
Holy crap. So at about what point did you start liking this comic again? You said that it was super slow at first, and you even said it seemed like it was supposed to. What do you mean by that?
It like the beginning of it, when they're when they're just doing things in and around the circle of the slightly damned, it didn't really feel like it was all that entertaining. It felt like a very boring part of the comic. Looking back on it, though, it may have been intentional as a way to introduce the characters without having a lot of stuff going on, and also because the Ring of the Slightly Damned is supposed to be boring. That's like a theme of the comic to a certain extent.
So do you think they're ever going to go back, or they're ever going to do something with that again? Because they left and they haven't even like that hasn't even been on the radar at all.
I'm not sure. At the point I'm at, I can't really say much because I'm not even close to the most recent page. It seems like that was just a way for them to have a blank backdrop to set up their characters with, so that you would pay attention to the characters rather than what was going on around the characters. So I don't know if they'll ever do anything like that again.
It's actually interesting that you talk about a blank backdrop, because pretty much when they escape hell, when they escape hell, they end up introducing Kieri, because obviously Angel shouldn't have been in hell.
Yeah.
And when they introduced her and like did the whole thing with her like joining the group and like all these things, the backdrop was trees and snow.
Yeah.
So it was very much the same thing. I think you have something there. So, as you may remember from our last comic, the artist went through and kind of redid pages.
Sort of. I noticed like 2 pages that were redone.
No, I was talking about the last comic, the Kiwi
Oh.
Blitz. She was going back and actually redoing
Yes.
pages. This comic has a much better system for that. Wherein those are sponsored remakes.
How so? Like they just get paid to remake a certain page?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
and it always was like super important or super emotional scenes that someone just wanted to see redone. And this comic has been running since 2004, and the first instance of these being redone I saw was 2013, and that was actually page 92 and 93, which was when they had escaped hell.
Yeah.
And,
I saw those remakes.
Yeah, there was a few more. I didn't list like anything beyond the like first ones I had seen. But I think that is a much better system of redoing the comic, especially since the original pages are still there to see.
Yeah, if for no other reason than you get more money out of your comic.
We can go that way, but I think it says wonders for how interested people are in just your comic. Like, people are willing to pay me to see this emotional scene done better.
Yeah?
That, I think that's awesome to see, and I can't say it enough. I love that system. I'd never seen that used before, and I want to see that done more, because it doesn't tie down the artist to redo a bunch of pages that can take hours upon hours each.
And it doesn't lead into the cycle of, well, now that I'm done remaking all the pages, I'm better, so let's remake all the pages.
Yeah, it's just simply put, it's like I'm redoing the key parts that people want to see redone.
Yeah. It basically gives them a list of what they need, or what they should redo. Not so much a case of let's redo everything so it all looks up to par. It's a case of let's redo this right now. Later someone might want me to do it again.
Yeah. And since Chu has gotten like quite a bit better at art, everyone gets better at art constantly. I would love to see like remakes of those same pages done in a year or so, even like later this year.
Yeah.
I think that would be wonderful to see, because these were like very emotional scenes, and I remember like a lot of them struck a chord with me when I first read this comic. So it was wonderful to see them redone. So moving on from that a little bit, the artist Chu also has another comic that is updated a lot more sporadic, kind of like makes this for fun. And it's Junk Hyenas.
Junk hyenas?
Junk Hyenas. The premise of that comic is it's these two sisters, both hyenas, that basically live in a like post-apocalypse like junkyard or like wasteland. It's like the whole place is just this terrible place to live, essentially. And they're both like mutants and like these just strange hybrids of human people, or of hyena people. Human people. They're they are part human and part human. But they're both like different degrees of hyena, which I thought was kind of clever. And it's just them like running a store.
Oh, interesting.
In this junkyard. And the adventures in that. Like, I remember one of them is a chef and wanted to get tomato. Wanted to get a tomato to make like the best BLT, because like a BLT is super difficult to make because tomato is so difficult to get hold of.
This sounds adorable.
Uh,
Like, that sounds like the plot to just a cutesy anime.
huh?
Like, we're on a quest to find a tomato. Why? To make the best BLT.
When you put it that way, it is actually very adorable and it's very nice to see. And I don't think I actually follow that, but it also is much more sporadic. It's not like a page every now and then type of upload. It's literally like they'll make the whole comic and then upload that whole comic. It's done in like vignettes basically of these characters' adventures.
Which would explain why it's so sporadic.
Absolutely. It's also done completely on the side.
So, in terms of, like, you've heard my opinion of the comic. You've heard that I really enjoyed it. In terms of how much, this is another comic that you've suggested that is going on my list of comics to follow, because I didn't notice that I blasted about almost 100 pages past where we need to read to.
I was going to try and stop at 300 for this one. I am now on 422.
Yeah, it sucks you in. Like, the story, you get really invested in the story and the characters.
Can I just say, I am super happy with the point you got to, because, you got past 300, and it got super, super adorable. Like, almost immediately after the 300 mark, which I don't really want to ruin things because this podcast,
it's after the 300 mark.
This podcast is intended to, like, we only talk up to 300, but it gets super adorable. Cliche as hell, but
adorable.
like, I really want to draw these characters.
I'm
now.
a sucker for that, so
I am too. So if you're interested in reading the comic yourself, it's sdamned.com. Just sdamned. You can type in Slightly Damned. It's very popular, so you can find it very easily now, unlike me, who decided to never do a Google search or something. In the past, I'm not talking about.
What is Google?
You can follow the artist on Twitter at sdamned as well. And you can follow the Patreon sdamned as well. In fact, the only and again, like, this person is very, very good at knowing like what a good amount of money is to take. Very clear this is like what they want to do as their job.
Which they probably do.
Yeah,
at this point.
To my understanding, I think they are like just full-time artists, making comics and doing all that stuff. They're very busy with conventions. So many conventions. Literally the only not perk. What is it with Patreon when like they get goals? That's what it is when they get so much per month. Their only goal is like minimum wage.
Okay.
And once they get that goal, then they're uploading like more of Slightly Damned. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very good system. This person is very, very, very modest, and I like that. So, closing thoughts.
It's an almost offensively cute webcomic that does still have very like harrowing emotional parts. The story is well written. The art improves to a level I'm happy with within the bounds of how long I would read it. And overall, it's just enjoyable characters.
That's wonderful to hear. I think I have to agree with you full-heartedly. I am probably going to have to actually reread this comic once we're done with this, purely because I think I can learn a lot from it, since this is now something I'm going to be trying to attempt. Yay. And with that, let's spin the wheel. And this next week's webcomic will be Two Guys and Guy?
Two Guys and Guy. This webcomic is fun. Just purely fun. It's written a lot like a Sunday comic strip in that it doesn't so much have a story as much as every strip is its own little joke.
Gag-a-day style?
Gag-a-day, yep. And it basically revolves around the plot of two guys and their friend who's a girl named Guy. Hence, Two Guys and Guy. And it's basically just what they do with their lives. It's interesting and funny, in my opinion. And we'll talk more about it next week.
All right.
No, in 2 weeks.
If you want to find the comic yourself, it is at twogag.com, twogag.com. When are we going to be meeting for the next one?
Give me just a moment. The 27th will be the next meeting of the Webcomic Book Club podcast.
Hope to see you all there.
Goodbye.